Hello! So the spring is here and flowers with it. So this time we'll try to paint and draw flowers. From doodly flowers to sketchy flowers to painterly flowers, and we'll even use a twig. So join me and see what we can do with some flowers. I started with some doodly flowers. Here I'm showing you just the pen I'm using. It's Pilot V-Ball pen, but it's probably not visible anymore. That's why I'm telling you. And you can find a ton of references and ideas for doodly flowers all over the internet, especially on Pinterest. And of course, Google is your best friend for this as well. If you prefer, you could also draw Xanthagal flowers or any other kind of flowers. Or you could draw the real flowers and try to abstract them a bit. I'm sorry, the visibility of this is not the best. I guess the overhead is not always the best angle. I'll work on this in the future, but I'm still trying to figure out my setup. In essence, what you do is draw a small circle for the middle of the flower, add petals, how many you want, depends on you. You've got flowers with 3, 5, 4, 8, 7, many petals, depending on what you like. I went with 5 for the most part, but there are some with 6 and 7 too, so don't worry. And then just play around, add little details, little lines, spirals, try to make one part a bit thicker, add more petals, whatever floats your boat. Now that we did some doodling, let's draw one flower a bit more carefully. It's always a good idea in art to start with the big shapes. Flowers are made from very simple shapes, usually ovals and triangles for petals and some lines for the stem and the leaves. I don't like how I put the perspective here. I think the lower petals are a bit smaller than the upper ones because of the perspective. You can't see that much of them actually. And I'm looking at a flower for my reference. I just picked up a small little flower. I would show it to you, but the camera is slanted and everything will fall. So you will just have to believe me this time. Now I'm adding petals, and petals are just these simple kind of U shapes, and sometimes they're a bit scrunched and sometimes they're upturned like this one, and some of them are just like normal. One thing that some beginners struggle with is making the stem too thin and connecting it to the wrong part. The stem should always come from the middle of your flower. And for this one, let's just draw it with the cheapest drawing ink for kids that you can find. Nothing fancy, just a small one. I dip it in and I'm trying not to dip it too deep. As you can see, opa, well, I shouldn't do that. Splatters can definitely add charm, but they can also show up on the other side, so take care. That's why you shouldn't dip too much. But we'll fix this by just adding more splatters at the end. I should be more careful with dipping ink. Now this middle part is very much fluffy, so I will use little dots to indicate that fluffiness. Sorry, I forgot all the English terms of flower parts, but you know what I mean. And now I'm trying to add some depth to the line where I want it to be thicker. I want this upper part to be thicker to stand out, and to do that you just press a bit harder. Some nibs are really soft and you don't need to press much to get this effect, and some are quite a bit harder. So experiment with your nib and with what you like. I like this pretty soft and flexible nib that helps me with this a lot. And for the petals that are, or petals, I don't know how it's pronounced correctly, and that are in the back, I am trying to keep them a little bit softer, a little bit thinner strokes, because everything that is in the front will be more visible. Now for the stem, it's nice if you can get it in one little nice line. It looks much better that way. And on my flower you can see some of underparts here and there. I'm gonna add some more little dots and marks here so that this part will jump out of the picture a bit more to increase the contrast, but I'm keeping one part lighter. You can always scribble down when you did something, and you can also write something about this flower here. If you want, you can also add some little lines on the petals, but if you want to make them subtle, I recommend drawing quite quickly here, because if you let the pen on the paper for too long, the ink will just soak up into the paper. These lines will add some depth to your painting, and it's always nice to draw them from where you want the line to be the thickest, from the shadow area to the lighter area. I want to add some shading, but I'm really not good with shading with pen and ink, and shading in general is not my strong point, so bear with me. And if you want to make thinner lines, you can usually turn the nib so you point it with the pointy side down, and that way you usually get a bit thinner lines. This one doesn't work that well for this. I think I'm just messing it up, so I will let it go, and I'll add some more writing when I'm done. So I finished my sentence, and now I will add some more splotches so that this one will not be so obvious. And splotches are often a nice way to make a drawing more interesting, or an art journaling. And after it's all done, I will
erase the pencil lines.
So I've erased the lines now, and let's see how it is on the other side. We can see it bled through, so I will add some splotches to this side, and I'll just draw on top of that, and that will be. But for this side, I intend to paint this azalea flower that is from my mom's pot plant that I gave to her a few years ago, and she was really happy about it. Now I'm just adding splatters to both sides actually. I wanted some splatters over my painting as well, and I wanted some splatters on the other side to cover the bleed through from the previous page. Whenever you make a mistake, just make more of it, and then it looks like intentional. I'm not sure if that would work so well in real life, but it works in art. Finer details, I'll use a pen nib again, but I'll load it up with watercolor. I learned this trick in Sketchbook Revival, and I really like it because I like the control of the pen, and the thin line of the pen, but I'm not so fond of the dark black lines. So this is perfect, and I encourage you to try it sometimes. It's a really nice technique. You get these really lovely lines that you can control very nicely. The only problem is you have to reload it quite often. Here what I'm doing is letting the line bleed a little bit, and this just adds some detail. I know it's not very realistic, but it's kind of fun to do it, and that's why we do it, you know. We can leave the realism to photographs and even to AI, and this is just our time to practice and to have fun. It doesn't need to be something specially beautifully rendered. It can be just, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. It's for our own mental health if you want to have a purpose, or just because it's fun. Art is fun. Art is such a nice time of spending time. People do all sorts of crazy things with their lives, and this one is quite harmless compared to others. And we always try to paint the lines in the direction that they're actually going. So if a petal is growing from the center out, this is how the lines will also be positioned. Now I want to add some of the stems, and they're very light yellow, greenish yellow color. So I'm mixing it in, then I'm loading by brush, and let's see how much that will show. I guess I will need something that covers the paint better for this part. There's been a storm, so a lot of trees had to be cut off, and I can take as many sticks as I want here and nobody will get hurt and no tree will die because of it. So that's one good thing. A tree stump that is left can be used to sit on while sketching, and let me show you how. My little sketchbook. Hey Julia! So since this page is already kind of messed up a bit, let's try something new on this. I just went outside and took a twig from our little tree. You can use any kind of twig, those kind of winter twigs. They don't have to have the leaves on. You just want to have some kind of more or less pointy part that you will draw with. And I definitely recommend a piece of scrap paper trying this out. I'm using the normal ink, and here I can try what kind of shape I can get from this twig, and then I can also try to sharpen it a little bit with a knife, and let's see what happens afterwards. And depending how you like it, you'll see what kind of point you prefer. Every kind of point will have its own charm, and now I'll just play in my journal. I'll loosely mimic this flower, but it will definitely not be very realistic, and that's not my goal here. My goal here is to remember the flower that my mom brought me, because it's from a plant pot that I gave her years ago, and she really likes this one. She sends me photos of it every year, and it's kind of our little thing. So, you know, these kind of things make life not maybe worth living, but definitely worth noting. You will need to dip much more constantly into this ink because sticks don't have any reservoir for the ink. And I'm just making it up as I go along. I don't want a completely duplicated flower, but I'm mimicking the shapes a bit. Nature journaling can be messy, and it's not that polished, it's not usually that rendered, and that's exactly why I like it so much. Because with normal paintings, sometimes they can be so intimidating, and this is so freeing. And because the point of it all is just to remember something alive that maybe is not us and that always gives us some perspective. I will try to go out and show you how to do this in nature. I mean, I will go out, but I will try to film it in nature. The going out part is not a problem, but I always have the problem with setting up everything in when I'm out and about. I'm usually focused on everything else and not on the filming. If you turn the stick, you get a different kind of line, as you saw. It's thicker and this one is thinner. And I'm doing the same kind of thing that I did here with the pen. We're just playing. This doesn't need to look very beautiful. It's meant to be playful. Have you seen children play? That play often doesn't look very polished and it can be quite messy. And they don't care. We could all use some of that toddler enthusiasm. You could also doodle like we did in this exercise and doodle flowers on it like that. Or you can doodle some and sketch some and try different approaches in the same drawing. There's not one right and one wrong in drawing and painting. You can see you can get quite a consistent line depending on how you hold your brush and how much ink you put on. Usually things have drawing utensils for ink have kind of a U-shaped curve of optimal working. Let's call it like this. Oops, I smeared some. I can shade it, try to hide it, or I can make it just worse. It's up to you to decide. And that's it for today. I hope you liked it. I hope you get some time to do some art, or at least to go to the nature and enjoy some flowers. The sun is coming to our northern hemisphere, but even if you live in the southern hemisphere, you probably get sun all the time. So have fun in nature, and I hope to see you next week. Bye bye!